Don't be upset by the results you did not get from the work you did not do.
Jen Cohen.
Jen Cohen.
Jen Cohen.
Jen Cohen.
She's a game changer in personal growth, best-selling author, and brand strategist on a mission to transform lives.
If you put the work in and you have that commitment, you will get to that goal. You have to pick one thing and commit to it. And then you don't change the goal, you change the...
As the host of the Habits and Hustle podcast, she's interviewed icons like Mark Cuban, Tony Robbins, and Matthew McConaughey. And her TEDx talk has inspired over 5 million people worldwide.
There is a level of entitlement that you have to have, and you have to believe that much in yourself where it doesn't stop you from the attempt and the try. Every entrepreneur has to have a little bit of that, or anybody who really kind of goes for the gusto and goes for gold like that. You have to have that mindset. To be honest, it comes from little wins. The only way you get those little wins is from action. Once you take away that kind of like that mindset, it opens up your world so much more. If you put the work in and you have that commitment, you will get to that goal.
This is one conversation you absolutely won't want to miss.
Welcome to Success Story. I'm your host, Scott Clary. The Success Story podcast is part of the HubSpot podcast network. I am a huge fan of HubSpot because they support entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs, founders, executives listen to this show. And for entrepreneurs that are trying to build, I have a question for you. Does it feel like your teams are getting pulled in a million different directions when everyone's digging in on different projects with different platforms in different places? It can be tough to stay focused on a common goal, and that throws a wrench into things. That's why HubSpot brings everything your team needs into one easy to use and easy to love customer platform. With it, they have everything they need to scale the business at their fingertips. So your marketers can write blog posts in a snap with AI and build better leads with in-depth campaigns. Sales can build connections and close deals faster with tracking tools and real-time performance insights. Service can get a hand from AI-powered chatbots for better support and more 5-star reviews. And everyone can deliver killer results and grow revenue faster than ever before. Because when your teams work better, your business grows faster. Visit HubSpot.com to get started for free today. Go ahead. Origin story, tee it up from wherever you want to tee it up to, and then we can go into partnerships.
Okay, origin story is I'm Canadian. I was born in Ottawa, then I moved to Winnipeg. Then I went to school. Actually, I got my first degree in Winnipeg, then I moved to Toronto for my second degree. My first real quote unquote job was I worked for the Toronto Raptors. And then I went back.
Really?
Yeah. And then I went back and I was really young, super young. And it was their first year. It was the first year that Canada had an NBA team, a franchise team. It was like a huge deal. And I worked for them. And then I went back to school and then started working for BMG Music. Then moved to LA, started working for another record label called Immortal, which was part of Sony. So I did like all these big marketing campaigns and marketing strategy for like all these bands, like at the time, Incubus or Slipknot. Do you remember Slipknot?
Yeah, I do remember Slipknot.
Yeah.
You mentioned, when I was listening to your TED Talk to prep for this, you probably said I'm dating myself like 10 times in that TED Talk.
Yeah.
But like you always bring these things up that are like, shit, that's like if I remember it, I'm dating myself. Like, but that's a while back.
Totally. Because you know what?
Yeah.
I'm like, as I'm writing this book, which will be out later on this year, I think I wrote in the book, I'm dating myself 100 times because like all these references are from my generation. How old are you?
I'm 31.
Oh my God, you're literally a baby. Okay.
I'm not literally a baby. I mean, I'm not old, but I remember Slipknot.
Okay, well, since I'm in my 40s, Slipknot are they even around? Is Slipknot even around still? I don't think so.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't think so. I haven't heard of them, but I don't listen to Slipknot anymore. It's like, I was like hardcore, like angry ass music.
So think about this, okay? I came from BMG, where BMG is like the umbrella company and you have all these other subsidiaries underneath, right? You have like Jive and RCA. And I was working on albums like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and Usher and Whitney Houston. And then like, cut to like, I had no experience in the hardcore. I don't even think it's called heavy metal. I don't even know, like hardcore alternative. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, it's just angry music.
And then I go and like I'm working on like Slipknot and Incubus, but Incubus was actually more alternative. But so that's my origin story. I kind of am a Canadian girl living in Los Angeles. I came from sports, segued into music. And then found my way in health and fitness by accident. And, that's really kind of where I began and kind of my evolution.
Okay. So this podcast, we're going to go into brand building. And I think that's interesting because a lot of people go into health and fitness and they don't really build a strong personal brand, but some people seem to like totally break away from the pack and do like what you did. So what's the first version of health and fitness for Jen Cohen? Like, what are you doing in health? Are you a personal trainer?
Well, what happened was with my story was, I, as you know, because you're Canadian too, when I got to LA, I was on a working visa. And when you're on a working visa, you're only allowed to work for the company that you have a visa with, right? That you were legally contracted to be with. So when I was doing all of that, when I decided to leave music, just because I was like really burnt out from it, and it really wasn't like, it was changing so much. It was not how it was kind of becoming much more about, iTunes and online strategy. It wasn't as like person to person as it was relationship. It was much more about, online.com.
Like digital marketing strategy.
Yeah. And what happened, so I decided to kind of, I was always really into like fitness, and I decided to like leave. And because I had no other way of making money, because I was tied to the record label, to Sony and Immortal Music Records, I was like, okay, I had to kind of like think out of the box and be resourceful. I'm like, well, if I become a personal trainer, that would at least, I can then make cash, or I can make money person to person. It will kind of like, it can kind of help me pay my bills until I figure out my next move. I didn't want to go back to Canada because I got so enamored with the weather in LA. Like once I grew up in like -40.
What's happening right now in Florida with me? Exact same. Right? You don't want to go back.
It's hard. It's hard to go back. Yeah. Like it becomes very addictive you become addicted to the lifestyle and like the sunshine. Like in Canada, it's gray and cold almost 9 months of the year. So when now I'm in LA and in California, the palm trees and the sunshine, I'm like, oh my God, I can't go back. So that's why I'm like, okay, I'm going to go I'll become a personal trainer. It was just kind of one of those like, random thoughts where I can make the money like on the side. And when I did it, that's when I kind of decided, when I went through the program, my first certification, I realized that, wait, I have all of these relationships from the music world. And I have like, I kind of have the ability to kind of maybe figure out a way where I can blend the two. So I basically went to one of the record labels where I had my relationships with, and I pitched myself. I created an opportunity to become a label trainer. I made it up, where I would train artists before they went on tour, or to do like a music video. And I kind of just created a job for myself by thinking, okay, now I have this certification. I also don't want to work for a label doing the marketing strategy and all that all that digital stuff that I wasn't very good at. But this I can kind of get behind. I know how the marketing budgets work. Maybe I can like do it like that. And then if I get put on retainer, I'm not capping myself at hourly. Because when you're a trainer, it's like you hire me for an hour, pay me $50. I'm making up the number. And then you're having a ceiling. So I just kind of like created this opportunity for myself and I pitched it. The guy was like, you have no business doing this. And I convinced him that I do now because I have my first ACE certification. And if you're a personal trainer, you know what I'm talking about. And he finally said, fine, we can try it out. And it ended up working out, and one label turned into 2 labels, turned into 6 labels. And that's how I kind of like segued myself and really pivoted my career from being a marketing executive to being a label trainer. And all I did was I used we all have it. We all have micro skills or transferable skills that we can use from our past. And I had those relationships. I knew how that stuff worked. And I kind of just figured out how I can like use it to my advantage, which is really what all of this is all about anyway. And that put me on a whole other path. My trajectory completely changed from doing marketing for labels and with artists to then being like their personal fitness trainer, you know? And so that took me and opened up my world way more and bigger than I ever could have imagined by just thinking a little bit strategically out of the box of what I want to do, where's my passion, and how can I how can I marry my passion with what my background is, my skill set, my relationships, and all the other stuff, and how can I match them together?
You know how cool it is that like every time something doesn't work out, there's sort of like 2 avenues you can go down, right? Like at that point, you could have like gone back to Canada and you could have completely given up and whatnot, or you could have done what you did. And I just think it's impressive that some people just think differently, because looking back, it's very clear. Like that's like such an incredible thing. It makes a lot of sense. Like I don't think you made this out of nowhere, but why do you think differently? How do I take your brain and the way you thought at that moment and teach other people to think like that all the time? Because that's an exceptional talent that it's very hard to capture.
Thank you. Well, first of all, what I would say is I always start with the question, like, why not? Like, why not me? I don't really give myself any parameters or at all, actually. And I think to myself, well, I don't like to live in this area where, you know, I think what happens a lot is this, and this is pushed by society and pushed by your environment, right? People like to compartmentalize people into boxes, right? Like if you've done marketing at a record label, then you're a marketing person. If you're a personal trainer and have been training people for 5 years, well, that makes you a personal trainer. And like, there's all these categories and boxes, right? I never, ever thought that way. Like my entire career has been, is not this linear line. It's always been like zigzagged because my brain doesn't see things as or see things as impossibilities, and it doesn't see things as these like boxes. Like I always go into everything like, why not me? There has to be like a level of, and I wouldn't say confidence, there is a level of entitlement, I have to say, that you have to have, and you have to believe that much in yourself where it doesn't stop you from the attempt and the try. So I think every entrepreneur has to have a little bit of that, or anybody who really kind of goes for the gusto and goes for gold like that. You have to have that mindset. And, you know, it comes from, to be honest, it comes from little wins, right? And the only way you get those little wins is from action. So really what comes from is like, you act. You may lose a couple, but you'll win a little bit. That kind of gives you that confidence to kind of try again. So I think that's the beginning. And I like I said, it's the one kind of thing that I think holds a lot of people back are these they compartmentalize what they think their skill set is, and they don't think they can do anything beyond that skill set. And then they have a lot of self-doubt even trying. So once you take away that that kind of like that mindset, it opens up your world so much more. Was that it? Did that
And then
make
you start
sense?
taking action. It does make sense. No, it does make sense. So that's like, yeah, you start taking action. You start having these little, and I love that you actually said that, because I do believe that there is a little bit of entitlement. I always say craziness when like jumping into something new, but there is a little bit of entitlement, feeling comfortable that like you're the right person for this, that you're the right person that could figure this out or solve this problem. And that's something that I wish people would understand. To get to that point, it does take those little wins, and like there's many ways you can have those little wins to get to that point psychologically. But if you don't have that level of entitlement day one, then you just start taking action. You just start trying things, just trying more things. Like it's so like every time I have these conversations, they feel so cliche. It's like, oh, try things outside your comfort zone or do something new. But like literally, that's literally what you have to do, because that's how you'll fail and win.
Well, I thought it's funny you said that, because like, you're right. Like it sounds like even when I said those words, like little wins, because it sounds super cliche. Like everybody says the same shit over and over and over again. But the truth, but it's true. But the truth of the matter is, like, when I look at all the people I've interviewed on my podcast and all the experiences I've had in my life, and I'm a very observational person. Like I love to observe, right? It's never the smartest person that ever is like who becomes the most successful. It's the people that are the most bold, who go after it and like don't stop. They're relentless, they're tenacious, and they don't think about the what if I fail? They don't have that what if I fail mentality. They just keep on moving and going, and they're resilient. So I kind of like feel like you need to kind of just have that. If people can really kind of tweak how they think a little bit and not think like, and not let things hold them back, like experience, skill set, self-doubt, fear of failure, their world would be so much different and open up so much, and the opportunities are so much more vast, right? Like people are like, how did you do this? Or how did you do that? Really? At the end of the day, you know how I did it? I asked the question. I just, made that attempt. I'm like, believe me, I'm no smarter or any more anything than anybody else, and vice versa. It's really just kind of, it's like the tenacity and the constant, I guess like the ferocious ability to kind of keep trying. Like that to me is all it's about.
Hey guys, Scott here. I just wanted to take a quick moment to say a heartfelt thanks to every single one of you. 6 years of this show, and it's really all because of you. Your listens, your support, your shares. It's what keeps this thing going. When I started, I had no idea how big this would get, how many lives we touch, the stories we share, the lessons that we learn together. It's truly humbling, and I believe that we're building something really special here. A community where no one has to reinvent the wheel. We're all in this together, learning and growing. And here's my ask. If you love this show, if it's made a difference for you, please share it with somebody who needs it. Tell a friend, post on social, whatever works. It's the best way to keep this thing going strong, bring on even better guests, and share more life-changing wisdom. And you can find us on all the spots. So you can go to successstorypodcast.com if you like listening to podcasts. If you like video, you can go to YouTube. It's youtube.com/c/Scott D. Clary, or the newsletter.scottdclary.com. Just spread the word. I'm eternally grateful for each and every one of you. Let's keep learning, let's keep growing, and let's keep making this world a little bit better together. All right, let's get back to the show. So two sort of points that I want to touch on. Like one thing, I've always said this, and it's a version of what you just said, but like do anything for 10 years, and to your peers and your friends, you're going to be considered like quite successful at that thing. Like, I don't care if it's like installing Windows in a new like a new house, or you're starting a podcast, or you're posting on social, like do it for 10 years and look at the results. And you're probably going to be monetizing that. You're going to be making some decent money. You're going to turn into like a side hustle or a full-time living. Like you just have to do it for 10 years. Like obviously you have to iterate and A/B test and keep trying different things. But I mean, like if you're moving in one direction and you have one goal for 10 years, it's very hard to fail at that thing. And you'll probably be known for being some sort of specialist at that particular thing.
Well, this is what I think. I think the majority of people don't even try. So when someone actually tries over more than once, your just pure numbers game, your potential and possibility for getting what that is, kind of goes up already by a landslide, right? That's the bottom line. Most people don't even try. Most people give up after they don't get somewhere. They're not relentless in their pursuit. But you have to be relentless. You have to be obsessive. Like another quality, like you were saying, well, how is it that you said, or like, two things. You're like, well, how is it that you have that mindset to even say, well, why not? There is like and I said to you, well, you have to have a level of entitlement. You also have to have a level of obsessiveness. You have to be obsessively wanting something. At the end of the day, if you want to lose weight, and you will lose weight if you want it bad enough, right? So this idea of like, well, I tried this and it didn't work and I did that. Well, you know what? I don't buy that. I think whenever, and I use myself as an example, when I'm not really that interested in something or not that passionate about something, or I don't really care enough, like my results are kind of like, and then I move on to something. But when I am super obsessed about something and super into it, there's like nothing that will like stop me. I become super tunnel vision. You have to be super tunnel vision to be successful. You asked me before we started this podcast, you're like, well, how did you get Tony Robbins? And you know how I got Tony Robbins? Because I asked constantly. I never gave up. And when one person couldn't kind of help me, or he said no in one way or didn't respond, I figured out another person who may know, who can have another angle where I can get in through, the back door, and that back door slammed on my face. So then I like dug a tunnel underneath, and, there was I couldn't get past that. So then I went to the other side, and I did there's like, you have to be constantly thinking of ways to get to what your goal is, and be relentless and be obsessive. And that's how you do it. And because, like I said, most people don't try that hard. Most people don't even attempt, or they give up after like they have one failure, then that's why it doesn't happen. So the people who try over and over again, they're the ones who are going to have the success, because it's attrition at the end of the day, right? Like, I'm not giving up. So through attrition, I'm going to win before you, because you gave up after like 20 minutes.
I love, there's so many, it's interesting. There's so many business and life lessons that can be derived from personal health, well-being, like attainment to fitness goals, like team sports. Like I love pulling over like all the lessons that you learn from if somebody's successful in the gym, and the mindset that it takes to be successful in the gym towards their gym goals. And then you take that person, and if you put them in a business scenario, it's like the exact same mindset. And I love that. I also like talking to like the strategy that all these like, football coaches deploy, like for their teams that are so similar to how you lead people in a workplace and stuff like that. But just if you have thoughts on that, that would be cool too, because
I'm so glad that you said that, because it's interesting, because, I was talking about how people compartmentalize, right? So many people say to me, well, she's a fitness person. She's a fitness girl. How would she be able to do that? I mean, like, how can she do strategy for this Fortune 100 company when she does like squats and lunges with, Becky on the side? Like, there's like a disconnect, right? But this is the interesting thing. Fitness to me was my foundation, because what it taught me, first of all, people don't even realize that I went to school and all the other stuff and all the things I've done, but they are myopic in their thinking and think because I did a squat and I like aerobics or step class, that your mind doesn't have the ability to kind of grow beyond that. But fitness to me was such a foundation, because it taught me, and it teaches people who do it seriously, goal setting, discipline. Discipline's a major thing that is overlooked, right? It takes a lot of discipline to go at something over and over again. It takes a lot of discipline to stay on track and not veer off track because something is more shiny over there. It takes so much discipline to actually pursue constantly, obsessively. So you learn the discipline, you learn the goal setting, you learn how when you see progression, or you see yourself progressing, that positive mental confidence grows, right? It also takes a lot of mental toughness to go somewhere over and over again every single day when you are tired, or when you are, working so hard, or where you're like not sleeping, and like go and like keep working out at the gym over and over again. Those things are
Getting up early. Yeah,
getting up early, eating well. Like that's like such discipline. That is such like it's all the things that are really important and transferable skills that you can utilize in business, and truthfully are the most important values and most important skill sets and fundamental values that kind of make people successful in their personal life, their professional life, and everywhere else. So when people think, oh, just because she's a fitness girl, she's not able to do this or that, I will go into that scenario and I'll say, okay, well, let's see what happens. And I will outwork and outwin most of those people almost every single time, because I've already have that foundation from what fitness gave me. And it is the same that's why when you're saying coaches who are team coaches for football or whatever, they are throwing so much at these athletes constantly, like for human performance, like not giving up when you are tired, and when you want to, when you are exhausted, or when you're sick, or when you just don't want to do it anymore, or the relentlessness that comes from all of that is such an important quality. And that's why if you actually look at a lot of the top CEOs or top entrepreneurs in the world, I'm not saying it's obviously like everybody, but I'm saying if you look at a lot of them really have they honed in on their morning routine, their fitness routine. They are doing things to keep them on point, because they know if they do that, it will help them with everything else in their life.
Now, okay, so our goal was to talk about personal brand and partnerships. You haven't done any of that shit yet, but that's okay, because this is good too. So
it's veered off a little bit. Is that okay?
It veered off a little bit. We could do it. Yeah, I don't give a shit. We could do more of these. Doesn't matter to me.
Okay, there you go.
It's all good.
Come back and talk about branding another time.
We could totally do that. So you're sort of dovetailing into a really good point. So like habits. So this is all about habits. Now, your podcast is called Habits and Hustle, which obviously habits is an important part of who you are. But so now we've established the habits will lead to success, patterns and will all lead to success, and processes will lead to success. But people obviously have a super hard time committing to them, because people are usually very hedonistic. They don't love getting, I'm going to take a gym example that you're going to appreciate. In Canada, in the winter, going to the gym before work, and you're shoveling your driveway at 4:30 a.m. so you can drive to the good life at 5 to 6 so you can make it to the office. And this shit, and it's not fun, right? So that's a certain type of habit that gets ingrained because you have that goal that you want to achieve. It's a fitness goal. Now, how do you, and I don't even know the answer, because I used to do that. And I don't know how I got to the point where that was so important to me that I would do something like that. But how do you architect your mind so that the end goal, the mission, is so important that you can build these habits? Because I feel like the goal to creating and maintaining successful habits is to have that end goal that's so important that you need to do the activities no matter what to get to that end result.
Well, you know what it's called? It's called commitment, right? And you gave a really good example of Toronto or Canada, when you have to wake up early, and basically get the snow and the ice off of your car and drive to the gym and all that stuff. People don't even understand what kind of level of commitment that entails, right? Versus living in LA and just going outside and just doing your thing, right? But it was because of those harsher realities that kind of even made the level of commitment that much more strong. But I think it's commitment. So my question to you is, are you asking me how people could kind of like, they can tweak their mindset to have commitment, or where does my commitment come from, or what is the question?
The question is, well, actually, this is a chicken and egg scenario. So say you have a goal. Is it a matter of tweaking your mindset, or perhaps better identifying your goals so that you can have commitment?
Well, okay, this is what I think. First of all, I think people have to focus, you have to be committed to whatever your goal is. Now, first thing is you got to figure out what that goal is to have commitment to. I think if you have too many goals or they're too lofty, then it doesn't matter. It becomes lost already. You have to pick one thing and commit to it. And then you don't change the goal, you change the plan to get to that goal. That's the first thing. You change the plan, you don't change the goal. And again, if you are obsessively committed and passionate about reaching whatever that is, you will reach it if you have that commitment. The problem is most people don't really have that commitment. They think they do, but at the end of the day, people don't want to work that hard, right? They don't want to work that hard. Like, there's a whole thing is like, don't be upset about the results you didn't get from the work you didn't do, right? That's basically what it is. Don't be upset by the results you did not get from the work you did not do. If you put the work in and you have that commitment, you will get to that goal. It is as simple as that. I am that convinced. And you have to have that mindset when going into something. You know, like if you say to me, while in Toronto or wherever, you have to, the car, it's cold and you got to get into the car, right? But like, if I want it bad enough, that's what I'm going to have to do. Now, this is the thing I was going to say to you. I think a lot of it is the stop is in the start, right? People don't know how to begin. They may want a goal. They may even have commitment to the goal, but then they can be kind of not knowing, they're overwhelmed by the beginning. So that's why I think it's so important for someone to have one thing that they're focused on and something small that they could achieve. Because if they achieve that, they not only gain the confidence, but if they actually notice a change or they notice something that's working for them, that is a lot of motivation for them to continue. So it's like validation. People need to see the validation. And I think it depends on who the person is and what the goal is. Like if my goal is, you know what, I want to marry Brad Pitt. Okay. That's not okay. It's not going to happen. I can try all I want, but it's not going to happen. Right. Like, I think like you need to have you have to be realistic as well. So I think there has to be a piece of it where you're like, what is realistic for me? What can I actually achieve that's realistic that I can go for right now? So, looking at yourself, assessing and having self-awareness, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're bad at, and leaning into the good stuff. Now, again, what is your goal? Is your goal weight loss? Is your goal to raise $100 million? Depending on what it is. So I always tell people, have a goal that is realistic. And then if you're not good at something, what I like to do is find people that kind of help balance my weaknesses. So things aren't done in like a silo, right? Like for success, it's not like everything I'm doing on my own. No, like I think I hope to be, and I try to be more all the time, but I try to be somewhat self-aware and like, okay, you know what? I'm really good in these areas, but I'm really, really bad in this and 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 this. And my toes, whatever. So who and what, how can I balance this shit out a little bit, right? And so you have to be really good at being okay with not being great at everything. Some people want to believe they're great at everything, and then it really slows them down. But if you can have that like self-assessment with yourself and then kind of fill in the pockets of where you're kind of weak, then you can actually become successful at whatever that is.
I just want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's episode, HubSpot. Now, HubSpot has an incredible podcast network. Success Story is part of it. And if you like Success Story, you're going to love other podcasts in their network. One of my favorites is iDigress. It's hosted by Troy Sandage. What Troy does exceptionally well is in under 30 minutes, he helps eliminate complexity, complications, confusion in your business. He talks about frameworks, strategies that really work to help you achieve scalable and sustainable success. So you need to go listen to iDigress, one of the most useful podcasts for entrepreneurs and founders, part of the HubSpot podcast network, wherever you get your podcasts. So, and you touched on a point before. You said, like, are you talking about my commitment and my goals? And I actually think that's a good way to like really tell a story and explain it. So, like, you've done like a lot of different things. Like, you're writing a book now. You started a podcast. You sold a company. You built a personal brand. So, maybe take a milestone or an accomplishment.
Sorry.
I know that we can go into that one too if you want. It's up to you. Like, that's always an interesting story. Yeah. But I was going to say, take like something that you've done and tell the story of how you broke down the goals, partnered stuff out, filled your weaknesses with people, expertise, and sort of went through that process, and then the short term and then the long term results. So just break down something that you've done, because I know that if you think hard enough about one of the things you've done in your career, it's going to model exactly what you just described. But I want to show like a very tactical, like tangible example for somebody that's trying to, it's like, oh, this is theoretical. I need to see like a real example of this.
Okay, perfect. So there is, when I did my first company was called No Gym Required. And No Gym Required was the idea, and the idea behind No Gym Required was to give people easy and simple solutions to be healthier and more fit, and live healthier lives without relying on a gym. So it's not that I hated the gym, but it was just like, you know what, if you don't want to go to the gym, you don't have time for the gym, you don't have the money for the gym, that's not an excuse to not be healthy. So that was the company I started. I had a book called No Gym Required, and I also created a fitness toning shoe called No Gym Required, which was this weighted shoe that when you wore the shoe, you basically burn up to 25% more calories because of the resistance, right? So I had a really great product, in my opinion, that I thought was great. And there was a lot of elements of what had to be done that I was really bad on. Really bad on operations. I'm really bad on like all the manufacturing operation stuff, all the financial projections, all of that stuff is my weakness. I knew that. So I found a partner who can help me with all of that stuff. So I can do all the sales. I can do all the PR. I can do all the marketing. So I found somebody who can really balance out what my weaknesses were. So I didn't go into the company thinking that I can do everything and then really fail, right? Most people fail anyway, because that's what it is as an entrepreneur. You fail, and then you have a win, and people are like, oh my God, how did they win? You're like, well, because they've tried for the last 20 years, they started 30 other companies, right? But trial and error, like eventually, again, if you're tenacious enough, it's going to work. But with No Gym Required, I found a partner to help with so much of that stuff. And if I didn't have that person, then it would have been a colossal failure. We ended up selling, and the shoe business is a very awful business because there's only a few very big players like Nike and Adidas and Reebok, and marketing budgets for these companies are like in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And I was like, it was like a David and Goliath thing. And I had really no money and very little money. I was factoring my money, which means I was paying a huge interest on the dollars I was getting. And it was pure grit and hustle that I sold hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pairs of these shoes, where a company wanted to acquire us. And anyway, it gets into a whole long story, but make a long story short, I was honest with myself, where I found somebody to take those things that off my plate, where then I can focus on what I'm really good at, they can focus on what they're really good at, and then you can have a real success at something versus not doing that and then just having a total, dog
failure, mess. Yeah, shit show.
And you still, like I said,
but the toughest.
You still fail most of the time.
No, I know. I mean, it happens, but I mean, you just increase your chances of success. That's really the goal. Like, you just try and incrementally increase chances of success. And, if you're just doing everything on your own, I think, startups already have a 95, 6, 7, 8, 9% failure rate. So hopefully if you bring in somebody smarter than you, at least you maybe knock a couple points off that, but it's still not easy.
Well, yeah. And also always surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. Don't be the smartest person in the room. So that's another thing, right? Because you want to also be able to learn, even if you start a business, you can't even think about all the things that come up that you didn't even think about, that you have to kind of get knowledge on. So even the fact that I had a partner who took care of all these things, all these miscellaneous things would come up all the time that you have to kind of learn on the spot or kind of figure out, or because it didn't work, that's when you learn that mistake for next time. So even though that company and, we sold it and then it became a whole shit show of other things, which we could do a whole other podcast on. But, I went into my next venture and with a lot of that experience and knowledge, all these things that went wrong, and you go into the next venture with all that information and experience and knowledge of pitfalls that you kind of learned from, that hopefully help you to be a little bit more successful, right? And it kind of keeps on going like that. So you really do need those failures to actually win later on in life, because that is unfortunately the only way you learn. You don't know what you don't know. So by going into something, throwing yourself into something is really, really important, because that's how you learn those tactical skills and those little nuance and details that you would never know otherwise.
Smart. And then, actually, I do want to touch on partnerships, because I think it's, we've sort of spoken about finding people that are complimenting you. And I'm sure you've been screwed before in the past with bad partnerships and people that you've worked with that haven't been great, because everybody in the world has been. But how do you find so how do you, it's going to be a multi-pronged question, which I don't like doing, but there's components to this shit. So how do you find the right people? How do you identify the bullshit? How do you understand who's going to actually help you versus hurt you? You have spoken about partnerships before, and it's obviously a crucial component of business, but I don't think enough people, everybody's like, yeah, sure, I'll go find somebody that can help build my business. But the second you do it, you realize that most people aren't going to help you, and not even maliciously. Some people just oversell themselves, whatever. So how do you, yeah, you're laughing because you definitely know at this point, you probably learned a lot earlier on too. So how do you deal with finding the right people, especially if you're going to find somebody to complement your weaknesses, because you're not strong in that particular thing that you're hiring for, you're partnering for. So you don't know what good looks like.
Well, 100% true. So this is the thing, right? I think volume. It's very important to put yourself out there and meet as many people as you can to open up your network, so you know. And I think the more experience you have, meeting people, working with people, you become better at it. But I think there's lots of different types of partnerships, right? When I'm looking for a partner in a vendor versus a business partner who's coming into my business to work with me as my partner in a certain business, it's a very different thing, right? But at the end of the day, I think it is very important that you actually respect and like the person, they have integrity, and you get along with them. At this point, I think it's that, to me, is the most, that is the most important thing. I have turned down many opportunities where I just didn't vibe with somebody because it was an uncomfortable vibe, and I knew long term it wasn't gonna be fruitful in any really real way. So I think you start slow. It's like dating, right? You kind of talk, you meet, you kind of keep the relationship going, you speak more, you talk more, you get together more. And I think you have to get to know someone. You gotta be discerning, Because I think a lot of times people do jump into partnerships and relationships, and then they don't know what they don't know because they didn't take the time to get to know that situation or that person. I think a lot of it is being able to, people tell you a lot of things without talking. It's not what they say, it's what they don't say and how they act that I look at. I look at how other people treat other people to know how I think that person is. It's not how they treat me. A lot of people are nice to me because they want something from me, right? But that doesn't count. What counts to me is how they're treating people that they are with, that their partners, who work for them when they're out in the world. So I look at all these ancillary things that have nothing to do with necessarily my relationship with them. That's really a big piece of it. And I think water does find its level, and I think that, again, I think it's so much of it is knowing yourself, right? Like, I know that how my personality is. So I look for is that person and me, are we going to be able to get along okay? Like, I'm super type A. And if they're really type A, are we going to clash too much? Probably, right? So maybe a type A personality would do really, really well with more of a type B personality, things like that I look at. I think you got to kind of focus more on your EQ here, your emotional intelligence, and sometimes pick some of these partners. But I think it's very important when you're building a personal brand or your own business, you have to find other partners as well that don't work within your own environment, but you can collaborate with, who can help build up your brand. And it's the same thing. Look for people who are like-minded. Look for people that you get along with and that you respect and like. Look for people that you can see how their true character and how they treat other people that they're with. Don't just jump into something. Be more discerning by taking the time. I'm not motivated. I've never been, and till this day, and I won't be. I'm never really motivated by money, because when you're motivated by money, you really limit yourself, and in my opinion, and you don't get the greatest return. So you have to have a bigger reason of doing something or desire than just making money. So
What do you mean by limit? I'm curious. What do you mean by limit yourself? That's interesting that you say that.
I just feel like whenever I'm not, like I said, I'm not motivated by money anyway, but when I have chosen I want to do this thing because it's more money, or I'll do this because of money, it's never been a really great experience if it's just money driven, right? I think it's way more advantageous, and the experience is better, and the opportunity becomes more when I'm picking something because I genuinely like something or genuinely like the person. You never know what you don't know. All of this, by the way, you can think that you're picking somebody great. You can think you have a great partner, and then it doesn't work out, right? These are just things that I look for at least before, right? If I'm not picking for money, if I'm not looking just for the financial thing, but I'm looking for the person or the partnership because it meshes well, and they have the same value system and the same whatever it is, it always ends up being a much more fruitful experience and an opportunity.
I want to take a second and thank the sponsor of today's episode, LinkedIn. Now, let me share a quick story. When I was looking to hire for my team, I needed someone who not only had the skills, but also fit our company culture. I turned to LinkedIn Jobs, and it made the process seamless. The quality of candidates I found was exceptional, and it saved me tons of time. Having quality candidates to interview is essential, and LinkedIn Jobs makes it incredibly easy to find them. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. It's a platform that connects you with professionals you won't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching but might be open to the perfect role. And did you know that 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites? If you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're missing these candidates. Plus, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours on LinkedIn. And they're always looking to make the process easier. They even launched a feature to help you write job descriptions. So if you're ready to find your next great hire, anywhere. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/excellence. That's linkedin.com/excellence to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And you actually, I want to make a point, like on the record, like you actually live it, because you were like, we won't name names, but like you were talking about like who you want on your show versus who you don't want on your show. So it's like, it's for you, it's like, it's a huge deal. Actually, first of all, like thank you for coming on my show. That's super cool. Like I don't know everyone's value system when like, I reach out to them or whatnot, but that's super cool. That makes me feel good.
You should, 100%. Like, to me, I don't care if you're famous. If you're a dick, I don't care. I don't have no interest in talking to you or working with you. It doesn't make a difference to me.
And you've had big ass names on your show. Like, this is not BS. Like, you've had like big names. You can bring big people. So like, when you can bring those people, like, I think that, this is, again, we're going to do cliche stuff, but like the mindset of abundance versus like a very like scarcity mindset. Like, you right now are always thinking in a mindset of abundance. And I'm not like a mindset of abundance speaker, but I know that like, just like the thought of like, don't chase after things, like just focus on like your core values and who you are as a person, and what you build and what you do and what you decide to sort of engage with. And like the good comes from that, as opposed to somebody who is like, I need the biggest names all the time. And like everybody falls into traps, right? Like, candidly, like when I first started this podcast, like I was looking for the biggest possible names. I thought that was the only way to grow. And then I had podcasts that I didn't like as much. And I'll never say who those people were, but there's people that were bigger names that I actually didn't love as much as people that were just incredible people to chat with, that were nobody's ever spoken to these people or heard of these people ever, but they were just a better conversation. And those are the episodes that get the biggest downloads and the most reach, and that's the one that, those are the episodes that you pull these teachings and these learnings out of these people because they feel comfortable with you. And that's like the shows that give the most value. Like, that's like, it's a very microcosm, like the podcast example, but that's how you approach life. And I think that you just have to always try and default to that mindset, because it's easy to fall into the trap of how do you chase a thing that that gives you the most success the quickest. It's a very difficult thing to stay away from. But I think that if you always bring you always ground yourself in your what I guess like your I don't know your I don't know what the word is, like the values of you as a person. Like, if you always ground yourself and you bring yourself back to those values, like that's how you pursue and decide what you want to go after.
I mean, listen, I think to me, what's very important for me in general is authenticity. I like people who are real. I don't like people who are bullshitters. I don't like people who are grand egomaniacs, grandiose. Like, I think at the end of the day, like I'm much more about like the feeling someone gives me versus what their outside persona is. To me, it's like not interesting. Because like, to your point, I've had a couple of people on my podcast who are really, really well known. And the podcast was kind of shitty because they're shitty. And I never even aired them.
Yeah.
And people were like, how are you not airing
Really?
this? Yeah. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a good conversation. It was like awkward and weird. They were like super closed off. I didn't learn anything. They weren't interested in really, they weren't interested in being there.
It felt like a chore. It was like a chore.
Phone, right? I'm like, to me, it's like, whatever. When I go down a route, like a road like that, you kind of like reap the kind of, whatever that stupid saying is. But I feel like
I know what you're saying. I can't remember the saying though, but I know what you're saying.
I just like people who are like really, I like nice people. I think people who, I actually find the people who are the biggest are usually the nicest. It's the people who are like nobodies, who have the biggest problems and attitudes, who like try too hard to be somebody. It's like, just be like a real person and be nice and be kind. And I just vibe with that much better. I think when people feel like they have something to prove, that is an uncomfortable feeling for me. So I don't lean into that stuff. And quite frankly, I probably should sometimes, maybe I should have a few times, and I may have lost, but it was when I'll even tell you this, like I've lost a lot of different opportunities early in my career because when I was in the fitness, people would always be like celebrity trainer, like all these like magazines and gossip magazines and TV shows would be like, calling me a celebrity trainer and like wanted to talk about like all the people I trained, right? Like that would be the only way I would get the press about selling my shoe or selling this or like, and like, it was so like tacky the way they wanted me to do it, where I was just like, you know what? Nah, I'm not going to do it because I felt like it was so compromising to who my true character was, where I just didn't do it. And I lost those opportunities. I probably lost a ton of book sales, which my publisher at the time, I wrote like Strong as the New Skinny and No Gym Required. And a lot of people who, didn't want to like write about my book because I didn't want to talk about, a celebrity that I trained 10 years prior didn't want to interview me. I wasn't important enough because I wasn't a celebrity. I wasn't like doing that. And I was like, well, okay. And I didn't sell as many books, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. I'm not going to compromise my value system. So again, it's about like knowing who you are and being true to who you are, being authentic and being real. You may lose a lot of shit short term, but I think overall, long term, you win. You win over and over again in the long term. So you're either playing the short game or you're playing the long game. I like to play the long game.
Life is long too. I think people lose. They don't have a really strong understanding of how long life is. Really, how long life is, and it's funny because life is long and short at the same time. Like if you're trying to achieve something in your life,
short, but okay.
The whole point I was trying to make is like set goals so that life doesn't feel short. That's really it. Because when you set goals, life is very long, and then you won't be as stressed about not figuring out whatever it is you want to figure out in life, wherever you want to go. I don't think you'll be as stressed if you set those goals because you'll realize at how much you actually accomplish towards that thing, which is like a whole other conversation that I like to have with people about. If you're working a full-time job and you're not happy with where you're at in life, start side hustles, figure a process for side hustles, use your spare time and use that spare time that accumulates on evenings and weekends to build up a business for yourself if you're not happy, or use that spare time to apply to 1,000 jobs if you're not happy, or figure out something, but set goals so that at night you're working towards a milestone, a goal. And I think that when you do that, life ends up working out. I think that when people fail is they don't set those goals. Like you said before, they don't start. You mentioned this before. They don't start. And then all of a sudden life flies by because you don't set those goals.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that people should realize the opposite, that life is short. So why would you live a life of kind of, I should have, I should have done this. I should have done that. Like I'd rather have any day of the week. I'd rather have way more rejection than regret. To me, regret's like the worst thing in the world. I'd rather be rejected a million times. You get over rejection really fast. Regret stays with you forever.
Yeah. This is probably a too large a question for the amount of time we have left. But I was going to say, have you ever regretted anything that you've done in your life? Have you ever regretted anything, or have you missed out on anything that you wish you went into?
We can do a whole podcast on that.
Okay.
We should save that.
I want to.
Because I have done a lot of stuff that I would regret. Just because I have.
And that's, you know what? Okay. Let's do some rapid fire. First of all, before we do rapid fire, where do people reach out to you? What's the best social? What's the website? All that. Drop it so people can go check it out. They
can go to Instagram at The Real Jen Cohen. I'm now on TikTok, same name, The Real Jen Cohen. They can go to my website, jennifercohen.com. And then, I'll be back because I'm going to be promoting my book in about 7 months to you.
Mm-hmm. And we'll do another one then. Okay. And then we can. Okay, perfect. Okay. So rapid fire. Don't think too hard, but biggest challenge you've had to overcome in your life. What was it? How did you overcome it?
Biggest challenge? I think thinking that I was stupid. And how did I overcome it?
Self-doubt.
Self-doubt, yeah. And then and that's my, why I talk about this so much. And how did I overcome it? I overcame it by just doing shit and doing things and then winning. Like I said, that's why everything that I talk about is because of my own personal experience.
I love it. If you could tell your 20-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
I would say, don't worry so much. Things are going to be okay.
Good. And then last question. I have more questions, but we're going to do another one.
What?
Yeah, I have last question for today. Last question. What does success mean for you?
Success means to me being true to yourself. I think living authentically, being surrounded by really good people that care about you and love you. I think that to me is really successful. I think all of this means nothing. That's why money doesn't mean anything. Nothing means anything if you're not around quality people who genuinely want to be around you and genuinely love and care about you. This is all for nothing. And then at the end of the day, you're not going to take your money to your grave, right? You want to be surrounded and be fulfilled and satiated on a personal level too, not just professionally.